Hello, everyone. I'm glad to open the floor to this World Water Week session called a Company's Step-by-Step Approach to Water Strategy Design. We will illustrate this approach today with glimpses into Tetra Pak's water stewardship journey. Thank you so much for having us today. Here's our panel for the session by order of intervention. I will now leave the floor to Martin to introduce himself.
Yes, thank you, Anna. Yes, my name is Martin Carlson. I work as a senior nature project manager for water specifically within Tetra Pak in the central sustainability team there. Anna?
Thank you. So I'm Anna, Principal Sustainability Expert at Quantis. I support companies throughout their water stewardship journey in 3 main steps, starting with assessing water footprint, then planning a water stewardship journey, while the final step is then to implement and transform the value chains to operate within planetary boundaries. So I bring my expertise to our clients throughout these 3 steps. Over to Ariane.
Hi everyone, I'm Ariane. So I'm a sustainability expert at Quantis, specialized in water. I work as an analyst and I perform the analysis to support our companies in their water journeys. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ariane. Now a few words about Quantis. So Quantis is an environmental consultancy that partners with organizations to drive sustainable transformation. Water is actually one of our 5 environmental expertise areas, among which are also climate, biodiversity, land and agriculture, as well as plastic pollution. We have more than 250 colleagues in different offices in Europe and in the United States, and have more than 15 years of experience. And now over to Martin for further context about our project.
Yes, thanks. In order to understand this project, you probably need to gain a bit of understanding about Tetra Pak if you don't know it already. So we are a world's leading food and processing and packaging solutions company. We, as a regular consumer, maybe you are most familiar with our packages. We produce paper-based packages in all shapes and sizes, as you can see on the right here. And last year, we put to the market close to 200 billion of those packages through sales to our customers and then onto the market. We are present globally with production facilities across all continents, basically. 50 plus production sites and sales offices even more widespread. Beyond the packaging portfolio that we also have an extensive equipment and food processing portfolio. This is maybe less visible to the average consumer, but to our customers, this is a big offering we have. So we provide customers with filling lines for filling the food products into the packages. We also provide equipment for food processing. That may be homogenizers, pasteurizers, equipment for making food powder out of liquid foods or even making prepared food solutions, etc. So that's a big portfolio of various equipments we develop and sell. Also, there is downstream equipment for transportation, for packing and so on. And then you can see also that we are engaging, of course, a lot on recycling, collaborating with recycling businesses globally to promote and encourage and drive the recycling of our packages that we produce. Yes, so that's a short introduction about Tetra Pak as a company. So let's now head in to discuss more about the specific project that we worked together with Quantis on. When we set our strategy for 2030 a couple of years ago, there was a growing realization that we weren't really giving water perhaps enough attention and priority in that strategy work. And it was not that we weren't having any data internally or that we didn't have any activities around water, but it was mostly that we focused on water very much on our own operations, and also we did some work in our suppliers, with our suppliers or with our customers, but in a siloed way. So we needed to have a more, let's say, joint up understanding of the water environment or the water situation for us as a company in order to really create a proper water strategy. We then decided that we cannot really do this by ourselves, or at least we wanted to make sure that the analysis that we were going to do was going to be anchored and developed in a very scientific way, and to be really credible and to be aligned with all the proper methodologies and standards on this area. So we decided to approach a consultancy to support us in this. And we picked Quantis for their expertise in this area. And the scope then and the purpose or the definition of the project that we defined together with them was to focus on the full value chain. So the value chain for us is our suppliers, suppliers both for equipment parts and for the packaging materials like the paperboard, the polymers and the alufoil that makes up the package. It was to include also, of course, the own operations still that we knew quite a bit about, but that was to be further assessed. And then we wanted to know more about the customer operations to understand that part of the value chain from a water perspective. And finally, the end of life for the products, and mainly then the packaging and the recycling of those. So with all this value chain approach, we wanted to analyze and assess the water risks, the water impacts, and then to identify and prioritize which actions needed to be taken and what the ambitions should be for a long term. This was also all in all a way for us to establish a proper baseline, a fact-based baseline that we could start from and then set our targets against, etc. And finally, this then should be built into our existing approach for sustainability. That is for promoting making a positive contribution to a global water resilience along the approach of food, people, and planet, as you can see here. So that was a starting point for our project, and I now hand over to Anna to take us through the project outline.
Thanks a lot, Martin, and thanks for your trust in our expertise. So now we will walk you through the different steps of the project, and we'll take 10 minutes at the end to address your questions. So we started this project with an in-depth assessment of Tetra Pak's water footprint in phase 1, then the water risk assessment in phase 2, and both of them served as a basis to develop Tetra Pak's water strategy in phase 3. So starting now with phase 1, we can provide a bit of background about the corporate water footprint scope. So you can see here the operational boundaries, and they are actually aligned with the GHG protocol operational boundaries. However, we don't use the same scope 1, 2, 3 terminology to prevent confusion and focus only on the most material categories. So we covered each of these value chain stages, starting with purchases, transport, direct operations, business travel and commute, as well as the use of sold product at customers, which is very important in Tetra Pak's model, and finally the end of life of the packaging, as well as all Tetra Pak's processing and packaging solutions. Then you can see here the indicators, and we actually covered a wide set of indicators covering both water quantity, and this includes water consumption and water scarcity, and also water quality. And this includes here freshwater eutrophication, ecotoxicity, and acidification. As we have a limited amount of time in the presentation today, we will focus the results presentation on water consumption. And here you can see the results. So you can see Tetra Pak's corporate water consumption in 2019, which represents 180 million cubic meters. You can see on the figure the contribution of each value chain section, starting with direct water consumption in operations, which corresponds to 1 million cubic meter. Then we have the indirect energy water use in operations, which is the water consumption related, for instance, with electricity production, which represents here 10 million cubic meters. Then the most material category is upstream purchases. As you can see here, it represents 97 million cubic meters. And the second most material category is the direct and indirect water consumption at customers with 65 million cubic meters. And finally, all the other categories such as end of life, transportation, business travel, and commute have only a minor contribution and represent 4 million cubic meters. Based on these results, we identified key value chain sections to focus on for the next phases of the project. First of all, we have direct and indirect water use in operations, so at Tetra Pak manufacturing sites, which represent 1% of the total water consumption for direct water use and 10% for indirect water use. This is for sure not a significant contribution, but it is well under Tetra Pak's control, and it can definitely be set as a key priority area for water footprint mitigation while avoiding trade-offs with carbon. This actually helps to keep in mind the environmental performance when, for instance, choosing different renewable electricity purchase types, as we can consider water footprint, the water footprint score in addition to the carbon footprint. Then the second value chain section is purchases. As mentioned by Martin, this is driven by the production of paperboard, fossil polymers, and aluminium production. And we found out that it represents 44% of the total corporate water consumption. And here, the next step would be to engage with these suppliers and to ensure they implement optimized water use and treatment practices on their manufacturing sites to mitigate their water footprint. And finally, the last value chain section is use of product, and this corresponds to the customer's direct and indirect water consumption. Well, the indirect water consumption is here again related to electricity use. So the direct consumption represents 15% and indirect 21% of the total water consumption. Here, given that these water uses are not in Tetra Pak's direct sphere of influence, the main action lever to reduce the footprint is to optimize Tetra Pak's equipment, water, and electricity consumption. And now we can move on to phase 2 of this project, and I'll hand over to Ariane.
So in the second phase of the project, we assessed water risk for these hotspots that were defined by the water footprint that Anna just mentioned. So the aim was to map and prioritize these hotspots according to their basin and operational water risk, looking at risks in terms of quantity, quality, and wash, and with the final aim of using insights from this assessment to develop the ambition and targets of Tetra Pak. So first we performed the basin water risk assessment, and if you're not familiar with this term, this is a type of assessment that looks at water risk within a geographical context. So really looking at the nature and the conditions of a basin, regardless of the activity of the site that is assessed. So we performed this assessment for all of Tetra Pak's manufacturing sites, as well as for a selected number of suppliers and customers. To do that, we used 2 globally recognized tools, the Water Risk Filter by WWF and the Aqueduct Water Risk Atlas by the World Resources Institute. And we followed the methodology of the Science-Based Targets for Nature guidance. Secondly, we assessed operational water risks. So operational water risks are this time really the risks linked to the activity of a site. So how the site depends on water, how the site impacts water, through its management practices, as well as looking at its history of water-related challenges, etc. And we performed this assessment by using the operational water risk component of the water risk filter. This is a questionnaire that is filled by people on site. And we also held some workshops with the people who answered this questionnaire to dig deeper into into their answers and their the issue that they might have, the support that they need, etc. On to the next slide. So across the three categories, performing this assessment allowed us to prioritize where to act first to mitigate water risk. So which manufacturing sites, which suppliers, and which customers to engage first, and where in the world they are exposed to the most water risk. And then we have some key insights in each section of the value chain that was assessed. So for direct operations, what was really interesting through this assessment and through socializing the results was that, first of all, especially through the operational part of the assessment, we understood the day-to-day operations of these sites. We understood the level of awareness regarding water, as well as some water-related challenges that they were already exposed to. And it also gave us insights into some good practices, water-related good practices that would be really good to share within the network of Tetra Pak facilities. And it also gave us the opportunity to emphasize Tetra Pak's new focus on water. So this was before the strategy was built, but it kind of gave them a teaser of the strategy that would come. When it comes to suppliers, so beyond knowing where to act first, we also learned more about the supplier's water-related efforts. So what was really interesting was that there's a lot more that's being done on water than what is publicly communicated with the suppliers we talked to. And we also got the feedback from these suppliers that they really wanted to work with Tetra Pak on water, and they really wanted to take this further and to really bring concrete action. And finally, when it comes to customers, so this is for Tetra Pak produces production lines, etc., and technologies for its customers. So it can really influence the water performance of its customers. So we really identified this opportunity to leverage these water efficient solutions that would really be key for customers to achieve their own water related targets in their operations. So across all these, assessing water risk, socializing the results, really laid the groundwork for future engagement on water, and really laid the strategy. So back to you, Martin, for the strategy part.
Thank you, Ariane. And yeah, so with these two first phases of the project completed, understanding the footprint of water across the value chain and understanding the risks and opportunities, of course, as well, along the value chain, we were then able to go to the last step, which is about setting ambitions, targets, and defining a strategy for all this. There are a number of frameworks and guidance documents and so on developed and out there to do this according to, so that it becomes done in a proper way, and one of those was the guideline for setting enterprise water targets, developed by a number of NGOs like WRI, Pacific Institute, CDP, etc. And there you can see these three steps, which the first of the two steps really correspond to understanding and assessing water materiality, for example, and water-related risks in step 2, before going into step 3 for setting and disclosing enterprise water targets. And similarly, for the quite newly launched SBTN framework, you can see that also follows a very similar process for reaching the stage where you can set your targets going forward. So I will now in the next slide here show you a bit. These are not all, but a select number of our targets, as well as on the top there you can see the ambition. And so the ambition was a way to tie it all into a a sentence or a number of like a section explaining the overall ambition Tetra Pak has on water, mentioning things like, you know, contributing to a water secure world, you know, being resilient in the value chain and the food system, taking a value chain approach, first of all, also important for us, not just to look within our own operations. And then to finally there also mentioning that we are aiming to solve shared water challenges in basins at risks. So we here recognize that water challenges and the water crisis is very much a basin context-based challenge and area to work in. So equipped and armed with the knowledge from the footprint assessment and the risk assessment, we had identified, of course, the hotspots and the priorities for us. And looking then at what could be the targets, if we start in the upstream, so in the beginning of the value chain, we identified a target where we would like to know more about the basin water risks for our priority suppliers. We have thousands of suppliers, so it's not possible to do a full-on water risk assessment for all of them, but focusing on the hotspots where there is water stress or where there are suppliers that are very material to us, that would be beneficial for us to understand their water risk and hence also our water risk in that sense. Going then on, moving to our own operations, I will talk here briefly about two of the targets. One being a bit more process oriented, or let's say qualitative, saying that we need to assess the risks at site levels. We need to engage on water stewardship through awareness raising workshops or other activities to build that capacity for our sites to work on water. And then, of course, also to continue to build on an improved water-related data collection, to have the right kind of data and at the right times for actions. And then a very quantifiable target there, saying that by 2030 to achieve a 50% water withdrawal reduction versus 2019 for sites at risk. So again, focusing on priority sites that came out of the water risk assessment and the footprint assessment, and then putting very concrete targets, quantifiable targets for those. Going then onto the customer side of things, we know, as Ariane pointed out, that we know that we can make a change or have a way to contribute to our customers' performance on water through the equipment and the processing solutions they buy from us. So we should look into our portfolio, of course. The target here is to achieve 50% less water consumption for our best practice lines in the various categories of equipment that we offer to customers versus the 2019 baseline. So basically cutting half of the water consumption on the best lines that we sell. And of course, we should then promote and monitor these sales and increase the sales of these best practice lines. What I haven't really shown out here due to lack of time and space here are that along with each of these targets, there are, of course, KPIs that break down these targets into more measurable and ways in which we can monitor the progress and or act if we are off track, etc. over time, along with roadmaps applicable to the organization appointed to drive these targets. So that's a summary of the outcome, basically. And what is the next steps then? Well, we need to ensure that this strategy it's anchored and there is an ownership for it at the highest company level. So raising the awareness at senior management level and even board level, so that we anchor these targets and commitment there and create the accountability. Even perhaps looking into how we can promote the use of incentives or other ways to promote accountability there. Secondly, I'd like to point out that we need to work more on communication, both internally as well as externally. Internally, to make sure that all our colleagues in Tetra Pak become ambassadors for our strategy, and that we share this information and this efforts together, and externally in those roles that we have. Secondly, on external communication and disclosure, we are, for the first time this year, disclosing on water security. So we will now have a full disclosure for climate, forestry, and water, first time this year. And that has been a very useful and good learning lesson and journey for us to go through as well. Then finally, just to continue the journey for water stewardship, looking into possible Alliance for Water Stewardship certification. We became members of AWS in 2022. I forgot to mention before, but that was a starting point for us really on this journey. And now we could look into how we could perhaps use certification against the standard that they provide. And lastly, going beyond our fence line, really, looking outside and looking for opportunities for collective action and stakeholder engagement in these priority basins that have been identified for us. So that's what we have to look forward to. And if you're interested to know a bit more and to see some of the numbers that maybe were flashing by a bit too quickly for you here, there is a case study available online. You can see the web address here in the bottom. And in this case study, you can find more results and details about this water value chain assessment project that we did together with Quantis. So with that said, we have a few minutes for questions, Ariane, right?
Yes, please feel free to write your questions in the chat. Just for your information, I just pasted the link to the case study on Quantis's website. And we have a bit less than 5 minutes to answer your questions. So we already got someone asking whether it's possible to share the slides afterwards. So you'll find all the information shared today also available on the case study page.
Questions?
You see no questions? Perhaps one thing that we could add is that you can share that this new position was created as a result of this project.
Yeah, so thanks for reminding me, Ariane. One example of the realization or the evidence that Tetra Pak is now realizing it needs to step up and it needs to focus more on water as one of the sustainability key areas for us is that actually there was a position opening up in the sustainability team to drive this water strategy, and I was fortunate enough to be appointed to take on that position. So I've only been driving this work in this position since the beginning of this year. But I'm very much looking forward to now taking it forward and continuing to build the capacity in Tetra Pak for understanding the water crisis and how Tetra Pak can influence this in a positive way. So I'm very much looking forward to engaging both a lot internally with all the key stakeholders, as well as, of course, with the huge network on in a conference like the World Water Week here in Stockholm, as well as with our customers and our suppliers in this work.
Yeah, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
So someone in the chat asked, which is the basin in Mexico you're working in? So I'm not sure if the question meant the production facility that is actually displayed on the screen.
Yeah, so I'm sorry that I don't know the basin name in Mexico. We have two facilities in Mexico. One, it's in Querétaro, not so far from Mexico City. And the other one, it's on the west coast, Mexicali, close to the US border there. Also not really familiar which water basin that is, but that's where we have our two operating units in Mexico. And of course, we know that these are water scarce areas and are among our priority sites for us to focus more on.
Thanks a lot, Martin. I think we unfortunately won't have time for any further questions. I don't see them, but in any case, we need to close the presentation now. So thanks a lot, everyone, for your attention. Thanks a lot for having us, and thanks to all the speakers today, and very great collaboration. So thanks to you for this great project. And yeah, if you have any questions, you can still write a personal email to us, and we'll be happy to address them at that moment. Thanks a lot.
And Martin and I are actually in Stockholm at World Water Week in person. So if you're there, feel free to grab us, and we'd be happy to discuss this in more details.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye.